You're standing on the pier, and the thing in front of you doesn't really look like a ship. It looks like a building that fell into the water and decided to keep going. 18 decks, 180,000 tons of white steel. Somewhere up there is a water park, a casino, an ice rink, a mini golf course, and about 6,000 people who are already ordering their first drink at 10 in the morning. And in your hand is the brochure. Sunset. An empty infinity pool. A couple in white linen who got paid by a modeling agency to look that relaxed. The whole thing is engineered to make you feel exactly one emotion, and the emotion is, finally, I'll be straight with you. Almost nothing on that brochure is going to shape your next 7 days. The two things that actually matter about the boat you're standing under are printed in two places you have never once looked. One is a health inspection score, sitting on a government website, free, updated twice a year. The other is a crime report, filed every 3 months with the FBI that the company would genuinely prefer you never open. One of those numbers tells you whether the kitchen that's about to feed you 21 meals in a row passed its last surprise inspection. The other tells you what actually happens on a ship when you put 6,000 strangers, an open bar, and 11 decks of hallways together for a week and push off from land. Here's the part nobody selling you a cabin will ever say out loud. The ship is not the product. You are. And the moment that clicks, the whole industry snaps into focus. The cheap fare, the expensive everything else, the flag flying off the back that belongs to a country most of the passengers couldn't point to on a map. So this is the honest version. We're going to go line by line through the cruise companies the internet screams at you to avoid, and I'm going to tell you which of those warnings are real and which are just snobbery. Some of these lines genuinely earn the side eye. Some of them are perfectly fine for the right person on the right ship with your eyes open. Avoid at all costs is a fantastic thing to put in a title. It is almost never true. What's true is more useful than that. Once you know what to look for, you can read any cruise line in about 10 minutes, and you never have to trust a brochure again. And hang around for the last part, especially because the single most important fact about the ship in front of you isn't the size or the score or the crime report. It's who it actually belongs to. And that one answer explains the price of your drink, the wages of the guy carrying your bag up the gangway, and what your rights really are the second you leave the dock. Let me show you the one thing that makes all of this make sense, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every cruise line sells you the same thing, a picture, and it's always the same picture. Calm water, a glowing pool, a plate of something with a sauce drizzled across it in a little zigzag, a sunset you're going to spend the entire week trying and failing to photograph. That's the ad. Now here's the thing that runs underneath every single one of these companies, and it's the comparison I want you to hold in your head the whole way through. The ad versus the record. The ad is what they paid to show you. The record is what's written down whether they like it or not. The inspection score, the crime filing, the fee schedule buried in the fine print, the country stamped on the back of the hull. The ad is marketing. The record is public, and the gap between those two things is the entire story of the modern cruise. Every line I'm about to name has a beautiful ad. What separates the ones you can trust from the ones you can't is sitting in the record, in plain sight, waiting for someone to actually read it. So let's read it. Number 1, Norwegian Cruise Line. And I want to be careful here, because Norwegian isn't dangerous, and it isn't a scam. What it is the poster child for the slow bleed. In January, Consumer Reports surveyed 18,850 of its members about the cruises they'd taken in the last 3 years. And out of 19 cruise lines, Norwegian landed dead last for overall satisfaction. Dead last. And when you dig into why, there's no single scandal. There's just 1,000 tiny paper cuts. It's the extra entree in the dining room that used to be free and now costs $5. It's the $10 fee if you don't show up to a specialty restaurant reservation. It's the drink package you paid for that, as of March, suddenly doesn't work on their own private island in the Bahamas unless you upgrade. It's the printed daily schedule that used to sit in your cabin, quietly deleted. It's the shows going first come, first served, so now you're standing in a line. None of that ruins a vacation on its own. All of it together turns the word all-inclusive into a punchline. That's the ad versus the record right there. The ad says carefree. The record is a receipt with your name on it. Norwegian is fine if you go in knowing you'll be nickel and dimed and you budget for it. Just don't board expecting the brochure. The brochure retired a few years ago. Number 2, Carnival. Now this one has the reputation, and here's where the record actually has some teeth. Carnival is the party boat. Cheap fares, huge crowds, and a lot of alcohol, and the federal crime data reflects it. For 33 straight months, from the middle of 2022 into early 2025, Carnival led the entire cruise industry in crimes reported to the FBI, and it's not close on the serious stuff. Since 2022, roughly 59% of all reported physical assaults with serious injury across the whole industry happened on Carnival ships. More than half. Investigators who track this data point straight at the fun ship model, cheap booze, packed decks, a party atmosphere, as the thing driving it. And zoom out for a second. 2025 set a record across the whole industry. 181 crimes reported to the FBI, and 121 of those were sexual. That's the highest the number has ever been. But here's the honest other side. Because you deserve it. Carnival also carries more passengers than anybody else on Earth. They've got something like 36% of the market. When you carry the most people, you're going to rack up the most raw incidents almost no matter what. Per passenger, the number is still low. And cruising, taken as a whole, remains statistically one of the safest ways a person can travel. That's just true. So the honest read on Carnival isn't, "This line is uniquely evil." It's, "This is a documented risk profile, and you should board knowing exactly what it is." If you want a cheap, loud, boozy week and you keep your wits about you, lock your cabin, watch your drink. Don't wander alone at 3 in the morning. Carnival is what it says it is. If you're picturing something calm and refined, you booked the wrong boat. Number 3, Royal Caribbean, the fall from grace. For years, this was the golden name, and in that same Consumer Reports survey, it's now slumping down toward the bottom with the rest of the big mainstream lines. And the crime data caught up with its size, too. In the second quarter of 2025, Royal Caribbean actually knocked Carnival off the top of the crime list for the first time in almost 3 years. Then it happened again in the fourth quarter. 16 reported crimes in 3 months, more than double the next line. On top of that, there was a water safety problem. Cases of Legionnaire's disease traced to some of the ships, including one of the giants, Symphony of the Seas. Serious enough that in March, the health authorities rolled out stricter water protocols across the industry because of it. And again, context. Royal Caribbean runs the biggest, newest, most jaw-dropping ships on the water. The ones with the roller coasters and the surf machines in the 8 neighborhoods, that's real. And for a certain kind of traveler, it's fantastic. And the crime numbers, once more, are partly just a passenger volume story. But that's the whole lesson of this line. So let me say it plainly. Bigger and flashier is not the same thing as better looked after. The ad sells you the roller coaster. The record reminds you that a floating city has a city's problems and a city's water system too. Number 4, MSC. This is the European giant, and it shows up on every avoid list, and I think most of those lists are being a little unfair. Its scores on the big review sites are genuinely low, hovering down around 3 out of 5. And the complaints are consistent. Service that feels disorganized, communication gaps, buffets that turn into a scrum, older ships that feel dated next to the newer ones. All of that is in the record. But here's what those lists usually miss. MSC is an Italian-run line operating on European hospitality norms. That means more formal, less of the American "the customer is always right" reflex. A lot of the one-star reviews you read aren't describing a failure. They're describing a mismatch. An American passenger expecting to be fussed over, meeting a crew that simply doesn't operate that way. And their sweet product, the Yacht Club, is actually excellent and quietly well-reviewed. So MSC isn't a line to avoid at all cost. It's a line to avoid if you need your hand held and you want everyone speaking your language and your customs. If you're an easygoing traveler who wants a genuinely international vibe at a genuinely good price, it's one of the better bargains at sea. Read the record, but read it in the right accent. Number 5. And this isn't one company. This is a category. And it's the one where the record matters most, because it's the one that can actually leave you stranded. The deep discount lines, the budget startups, the one-ship operations built on recycled, aging hulls. When a fare looks too cheap to be real, that low number is the tell. You'll see lines like Margaritaville at Sea, which people genuinely enjoy for a short, fun, cheap escape. But its ship is a hand-me-down, an old Costa hull, and the reviews say exactly what you'd expect. Worn, dated, thin on staff. And across the industry's history, this budget end is where lines have quietly gone under and left passengers holding a worthless ticket, sometimes mid-trip. So here's the practical move, and it's the single most useful thing in this whole video. Before you book any cheap cruise, look up 2 things that take 5 minutes each. 1, the ship's actual build year. A new-to-the-fleet ship is very often a 30-year-old ship with fresh carpet. 2, that health inspection score I mentioned, which is public and free. Ships get graded out of 100 twice a year by surprise. 86 or above passes. Below that is a documented failure, and they publish exactly what went wrong. And they're not just glancing around. They're checking the drinking water, the temperature of the food in the galley, the chemicals in the pools and hot tubs, the cabin cleanliness, and, yes, whether the ship has a pest problem, which is a mental image I'll leave you with for free. The industry average sits up in the mid-90s, and the best ships hit a perfect 100. One of Carnival's newest scored a flawless 100 in March. If a ship you're looking at is scraping the low 80s, the record just told you something the ad never would. And a quick, honest note on that, because you may have heard the program got gutted. It's true, in 2025, budget cuts stripped a lot of staff out of the agency that runs those inspections, and people panicked that nobody was watching the kitchens anymore. But look at the record instead of the headline. The remaining inspectors actually ran more inspections that year, not fewer, over 270 ships, up nearly 40%. And the stomach bug outbreaks that plague these ships are actually down sharply this year compared to last. So, the tool still works. Use it. Number 6. And this is the one that reformed the entire industry, and it's the clearest proof of what actually keeps you alive on a ship. Because it isn't the water slide. Costa. On the night of January 13th, 2012, the Costa Concordia, a brand new floating resort, longer than the Titanic, over 4,200 people aboard, left port in Italy on a routine week-long Mediterranean cruise. A few hours out, the captain took her off her programmed route to swing in close to a little island for a salute, a show-off pass by the shore. She hit a reef, tore a 53-meter gash down her side. The engine room flooded, the power died, and this state-of-the-art vessel became a dead, dark, tilting island of steel. 32 people died. And here's the gut punch. Most of them didn't die from the impact. They died in the hour that followed, because the crew told everyone it was just an electrical fault. The alarm came late, and the lifeboats weren't ready by the time the ship had leaned too far to launch them. The captain, Francesco Schettino, left the ship with around 300 people still aboard. He got 16 years, and out of those 32 deaths came the rules that protect you today. The safety drill that now has to happen before or right after you sail instead of somewhere out at sea, and a total overhaul of how a ship's bridge team is trained to handle a crisis. The honest read on Costa isn't that the line is cursed. It's that this one night, more than any glossy ad ever made, tells you what to actually look for. It was never the size or the amenities. It was the culture on the bridge and whether the crew knew what to do when the lights went out. So that's the avoid side. Now let me give you the few that are genuinely, provably safe, the ones that earned it in the record, not the ad. Because in that same big survey of nearly 19,000 cruisers, out of 19 lines, only 3 scored high enough to actually get recommended. Only 3. Number 7, Viking. And this is the interesting one, because Viking wins by taking things away. No casino, no water slides, no kids. It's adults only. No constant loudspeaker announcements. What's left is a mid-sized ship, capped around 1,000 passengers, 1 crew member for every 2 guests, and a fare that actually includes things, your shore excursions, beer and wine with dinner. So you're not getting hit with that steady drip of charges. It scored right at the top of the survey. People who sail it say they got addressed by name for a week. Now the trade-off is real. It's expensive, with the typical traveler spending around $7,000 a head, and it is absolutely not for you if you want a party or a slide or anything for children. And honesty cuts both ways, so I'll tell you. Even Viking had a genuine scare back in 2019 when one of its ships lost engine power in a storm off Norway and came within about 100 meters of running aground before the crew got it back. Nobody's magic out there, but its record before and since is one of the strongest on the water. Number 8. The small ship specialists, Windstar, and, right at the very top of that survey, National Geographic-Lindblad. This is the opposite of the mega ship. Windstar runs little motor sail yachts carrying a couple hundred people. Lindblad runs expedition ships that take you to Antarctica and the Galapagos, some of them with nearly 1 crew member for every single passenger. A level of service that's just physically impossible on a boat carrying 6,000. Lindblad scored number 1 overall. Number 1, the catch, and you already know what it is money. The typical Lindblad passenger spent close to $11,000, Windstar around 5.5. And this isn't lie-by-the-pool cruising. It's expedition and enrichment, lectures, naturalists, zodiac landings on rocky shores. You come home tired and informed instead of sunburned and hungover. But if that's the trip you want, these are the safest, best-run names in the business. Full stop. Number 9. And for families, one name earns it. Disney. It came in 4th overall, just behind that top 3. And for families with young kids, it's honestly in a class of its own. The best kids programming at sea. A private island. Service Disney has spent decades perfecting. But I promised you the honest version, so here's the honest version. Disney shows up in the same federal crime data as everybody else. Reports of sexual assault on its ships climbed from just a handful a year to 15 in 2023 and 18 in 2024. Now, Disney carries an enormous number of families, so that's partly a volume story like the others, and it remains, by reputation and by record, the gold standard for a family at sea. I'm not telling you to avoid it. I'm telling you the same federal ledger catches everyone, even the mouse, and no ship anywhere is a magic bubble. The real catch with Disney isn't safety. It's the bill. You'll typically pay 30 to 50% more than Royal Caribbean for the same Caribbean route. You're paying for the characters. For a lot of families, that's worth every dollar. All right. Now the part I told you to wait for, because we've talked about scores and crime and fees, and all of that is real. But it's downstream of one fact that explains the whole machine. Here it is. The cruise line you sail is almost certainly not from the country you think it's from. Carnival's headquarters are in Miami, but the company is incorporated in Panama, and its ships fly the flags of Panama and the Bahamas. Norwegian, incorporated in the Bahamas. Royal Caribbean has been legally a Liberian company since 1985. Liberia, in West Africa, flying the flags of the Bahamas and Malta. These are American companies in every way that matters except the 2 ways that pay, taxes and law. They call it flying a flag of convenience, and the convenience is enormous. By registering that ship in Panama or Liberia instead of the United States, the company sidesteps U.S. corporate taxes, U.S. labor law, and a big chunk of U.S. safety regulation all at once. One estimate figured Carnival alone would have owed around $600 million in corporate tax on a single big year if it played by American rules. It doesn't have to. And now connect that to the fare. Why is the ticket so cheap? Because the ticket isn't where the money is. On these big lines, somewhere around a third of all revenue, 34%, comes not from your fare, but from what you spend once you're aboard. And there is nowhere else to go. The drinks, the Wi-Fi, the specialty restaurant, the shore excursion, where the line pockets a huge slice and the local guide gets the crumbs, the casino, the photos. The whole ship is a machine for getting you to open your wallet in a place with no competition. They've studied it down to the dollar. A passenger who pre-books their activities before sailing ends up spending about 2.5 times more on board than one who doesn't. That's not an accident. That's the design. The cheap fare is the bait. You are the catch. And I want to be careful here, because this isn't a conspiracy and there's no villain twirling a mustache. It's just cold commercial logic. A cruise line is a thing built to look like a floating city and be taxed like a freighter registered in Liberia. That's the trick. And it's completely legal. And it's been legal for almost a century. The people you should feel something for aren't the executives. It's the crew. That flag in Panama is also the reason the guy cleaning your cabin and the woman refilling the buffet are hired out of the developing world, working brutal hours for wages an American labor law would never allow, sheltered offshore from the protections you take for granted on land. There's a fresh twist to all this too. In 2025, the U.S. government finally moved to close the tax loophole, the cruise stocks wobbled, and the lawyers lined up to fight it. How that ends, nobody knows yet. But it tells you exactly how much that little flag on the stern is worth. So let me pull the lens all the way back for a second. There's a difference between seeing the ocean and understanding what you're floating on. Anybody can stand on a top deck and watch a sunset. That part really is beautiful, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But there's a quieter kind of satisfaction in knowing what's actually under your feet, in reading the ship instead of the brochure, in understanding that the calm water in the ad and the crime report filed with the FBI are two descriptions of the same week, and one of them was written by the marketing department and one of them wasn't. The whole industry is built on the hope that you'll only ever look at the first one. You don't have to. The record is right there, it's public, it's free, and it doesn't care what the brochure promised. Learn to read the manifest and the sunset's still yours. You just also know exactly what you booked. That's not cynicism. That's just traveling with your eyes open, which is the only way I know how to do it. So here's what I want you to walk away with, in order, so you can use it the next time a cruise deal lands in your inbox. First, pull the health score. It's public, it's free, it's updated twice a year, 86 passes out of 100, and it takes 2 minutes. If a ship's scraping the low 80s, listen to that. Second, check the crime data. It's filed quarterly and reported every year, and it'll tell you which lines and which kinds of ships show the worst patterns. As long as you remember it only counts American passengers and undercounts the rest. Third, read the fee schedule before you book, not after, because all-inclusive and free at sea are marketing phrases, not contracts. Fourth, be deeply suspicious of the rock-bottom fare. That low number is telling you where the money's coming from later, and it's coming from you. Fifth, match the line to the trip you actually want, because half the one-star reviews out there are just people who booked the wrong boat. And last, remember that safe and luxurious are not the same word, and neither one is printed on the flag flying off the back. And if you want the short list of the ones that genuinely earn it, Viking if you're an adult who wants calm and quiet and a fare that includes things. Lindblad or Windstar if you've got the money and you want the small ship and the real places. Disney if you've got kids and you know what the premium buys. Everybody else, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, MSC, can be a perfectly good week as long as you board knowing the record and not the ad. Picture it. 6 months from now, a friend forwards you a cruise deal that looks unbelievable, and instead of falling for the sunset, you open 2 tabs, read the score, glance at the record, spot the recycled hull, and in 10 minutes, you know more about that ship than the person trying to sell it to you. You book the right one for the right reasons, and you spend the week actually relaxed. Not because the brochure told you to, but because you already know exactly what you're standing on. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments which cruise line surprised you. The one that was better than its reputation, or the one that quietly let you down. And I really want the specifics. The fee that made your jaw drop. The thing the brochure completely left out. The honest tip a crew member slipped you when the manager wasn't around. Those are the ones that stick with me. I read every single comment on these, and the stories from people who've actually been out there on these ships are the whole reason I keep making them. If this changed how you'll look at the next cruise ad you see, subscribe and stick around, because next time we're not going to the ship, we're going to the ports, that private island paradise your line keeps advertising, the one with your cruise company's name on it. I'm going to show you what it actually is, who really owns that beach, and what happened to the town next door that sold its harbor and got a souvenir shop in return. It's one of the strangest little stories in modern travel, and once you see it, you'll never look at a shore day the same way. Until then, read the record, not the brochure, and I'll see you at the next port.